For centuries, Stonehenge has baffled historians and archaeologists. What was this ring of massive stones doing here in the middle of southern England? Built around 3000 BC, it's about 5,000 years old. And because there are no written records, we don't know anything about how it was built, why it was built, who built it. But a new discovery might finally explain why it was built, and it's shocking. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're answering the extraordinary. How did they move those massive stones? And what was the purpose of Stonehenge? Stonehenge is one of the world's most famous archaeological sites, but also one of the least understood. Who were the builders? Why did they choose this particular site? What role did it play in their society? All of these questions have spawned countless theories. It was an ancient calendar, a burial site, a healing place, a portal to other dimensions, an alien landing pad, and that last one is by far the most popular on Reddit. Now, today's discoveries are shedding new light on some of those possibilities. Archaeologists recently used advanced ground-penetrating radar and chemical analysis to peer beneath the surface and determine what Stonehenge's builders might have been up to. And what they found will shock you. First things first, let's quickly cover what we already knew. Stonehenge is a ring of standing stones set within a circular ditch and bank in Wiltshire, England. It's made up of 30 massive sarsen stones, each weighing about 25 tons, arranged in a horseshoe shape. Inside that, there's a smaller circle of bluestones, which came from a mountain range in southwest Wales, about 180 miles away. We also know that people have been coming to Stonehenge for at least 6,000 years. There was a small Neolithic settlement here from about 9,000 years ago. Then, around 5,000 years ago, during the Bronze Age, the Stonehenge monument began to take shape. First, huge ditches were dug around the site. Then, the massive sarsen stones were hauled into place and shaped into a circle. Over the next several hundred years, more stone circles were added, along with burial mounds and a causeway leading up to the site. And all of this was carefully arranged to line up with the winter solstice. But what was going on here? In the modern era, we've tended to see Stonehenge as a single structure, a monument frozen in time from around 3000 BC. But according to new research, it was actually part of a much larger ceremonial complex that went through several phases of construction. Using ground-penetrating radar, archaeologists discovered a series of 20 or so previously unknown pits and post holes around the main circle. Some are large enough to have held massive wooden posts. Based on the layout, researchers believe that the original plan called for a circular ditch and bank similar to what would later become the outer ring of Stonehenge. Within that enclosure, there would be a series of wooden posts connected by walkways. As you can see, it looks kind of like a gigantic spiderweb. But what does it mean? Researchers believe this may represent an earlier version of Stonehenge, one that predates the construction of the inner and outer rings. Basically, instead of walking between stone monoliths, people would have walked between wooden posts. Of course, the biggest question is why. What kind of ceremony could have possibly required so much space? Well, based on their location, it appears the post holes formed a concentric circles around the central area, which itself was divided into segments using large sarsen stones. Between these circles were the beginnings of what would become Stonehenge's signature trilithons, pairs of upright stones capped by a third horizontal stone. Scattered among them were pits that may have been used for burials. The team believes that Stonehenge originally began as a wooden structure that evolved over time. As people returned again and again to perform ceremonies at the site, they gradually replaced the wood with stone until eventually you had something resembling a permanent structure. What is perhaps even more fascinating, however, is not what archaeologists found, but rather what they didn't find. They expected to uncover evidence of human remains, but after excavating 22 skeletons, none of them were anywhere near the center of the monument. Instead, all of the burials were along the avenue leading up to Stonehenge or outside the circular ditch. So if this wasn't a burial ground, then what was its purpose? Well, one clue comes from the stones themselves. Remember those blue stones that came from Wales, 180 miles away? Well, researchers recently uncovered new chemical signatures on those stones that match a specific quarry in the Preseli Hills. That means that the builders of Stonehenge didn't just haul 25-ton rocks from a nearby hilltop. They completed an arduous journey across rough terrain to reach the source of the bluestones, which suggests the effort was worth it. Somehow, these stones had special significance. Another indication of just how important these Welsh imports were comes from inside Stonehenge itself. A pair of bluestones, known as the heel stone and the slaughter stone, are positioned to form an axis with the midsummer sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. That means that the builders went out of their way to make sure that these particular stones were placed in a way to align with the cosmos. To me, that suggests Stonehenge was an astronomical observatory. After all, Many cultures around the world build structures aligned with solstices and equinoxes. The Mayans built pyramids in Yucatan that lined up with cardinal directions. The Greeks constructed the Great Altar at Delphi to catch the first rays of the morning sun. Native Americans built the Pueblo Bonito, great houses to take advantage of summer and winter solstice alignments. Stonehenge is similar in that respect. But this is where our understanding of Stonehenge gets really interesting. You see, that same heelstone also aligns with a trilithon on the opposite side of the monument. When the winter solstice sun hits the heelstone, it bounces back off a flat capstone on that trilithon and reflects it right back where it came from. And this happens every single year without fail. It's as though the builders of Stonehenge were attempting to capture the sun itself. But what does that mean? If it was a religious observatory, what kind of rituals took place here? Well, recent excavations have turned up hundreds of artifacts, including broken animal bones and traces of burnt material. Animal bones from pigs, cattle, sheep, and goat were discovered near the base of the heelstone, and when researchers analyzed the soil around the bluestone circle, they found traces of burnt cereals and butchered animals. All of this adds up to one thing. Stonehenge was a place where people gathered to feast and sacrifice animals. In fact, the presence of so many animal bones has led some to call Stonehenge the most monstrous barbecue pit in history. It's clear that whatever rituals took place here were significant events that drew people from across Europe. According to Professor Paul Garlock, director of the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes Project, Stonehenge was probably a healing hub, a place where pilgrims would travel for rituals to cure sickness or infertility. Professor Garlock told Live Science, the idea is that people would come up the avenue from the south, having walked for many days, carrying objects associated with healing, with water, maybe carrying sick people. They would walk around the monument, moving east to west, doing certain rituals, and then go back down the avenue cured. Now, while that sounds a bit far-fetched, there is precedent for such healing rituals in other cultures. For instance, the ancient Greeks believed that the air in the Temple of Apollo at Delphi could cure mental illness, and a pilgrimage to Delphi was considered a kind of therapy. Similarly, the Romans believed the air at the temple of Asclepius could heal the sick, and patients would spend the night in its courtyard to absorb the healing vibes. Stonehenge may have served a similar function. Now, it is certainly possible that Stonehenge was a more general, religious and astronomical observatory that played host to festivals, burials, and maybe even gladiator games. But considering the number of artifacts uncovered, including those fragments of burnt cereal, I tend to agree with Professor Garlock. Stonehenge was probably a kind of healing center that attracted visitors from all across Europe. And all of this raises another intriguing possibility. If Stonehenge was a healing hospital for the ancient world, then it follows that those who built it must have been pretty advanced for their time. Remember that the first rudimentary hospitals didn't appear until the Middle Ages, and there was nothing quite like modern medicine until the 19th century. So how did prehistoric man manage to build such a sophisticated institution? Well, it helps to remember that Stonehenge wasn't built all at once. It went through several phases of construction over several hundred years. Each time people returned to this spot in the landscape, they brought with them new knowledge and new techniques. And over time, that knowledge accumulated, eventually resulting in a monumental structure that may have saved lives. In the end, the Stonehenge story isn't just about one monument. It's about an entire network of people who cooperated, communicated, and traded ideas across Europe. It's the epic tale of a civilization, one that makes Reddit's alien theories seem a bit silly in comparison. So what do you think? Was Stonehenge an ancient hospital, a cosmic calendar, or both? Drop your theory below. The truth might be stranger than we imagine. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.